going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about some pesky cameras that can really ruin your day. If you've ever gotten one of these in the mail, you're going to know what I'm talking about. The super annoying red light cameras installed on our streets to make them safer, to catch those drivers who put other people's lives in danger, right? Well, it turns out the major motivation for them might be something else entirely: money. And while they have brought lots and lots of money to cities and municipalities across this country, they come at a cost, the cost of people's privacy. Here to talk more about this is Mike Riggs, associate editor for Reason. Hey there, Mike. Okay, so the common justification local governments use when purchasing red light cameras is safety. However, what we're seeing is a huge upswing in traffic tickets and therefore revenue for these cities. Is that the purpose for these cameras?
It actually is the purpose for these cameras. Studies have shown, studies that have been 2-year studies, 3-year studies from Florida, from New Mexico, from California, have all shown that there is no discernible decrease in traffic fatalities or in speeding when red light cameras are installed. In fact, one study in New Mexico found that it compared 4 intersections that had traffic cameras to 6 that did not, and at 3 of the 4 intersections that had traffic cameras, accidents actually increased. So, but cities are keeping them on anyway. I mean, you know, if they get approximately 20% of the amount from a speeding ticket, the other 80% goes towards the companies that supply these, because these cameras are incredibly expensive. So it really is just a revenue-generating project for cities.
And now here's something interesting. The city of Rochester just adopted a new procedure that exempts city employees from paying for these tickets. Now, according to the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, City of Rochester employees have committed at least 119 red light violations while driving city vehicles. Now, in some cases, we're talking about ambulances or police cars, but often those police didn't have their sirens on. And there were also violations by, solid waste, building services, cemetery and library vehicles. Do you think this gives further evidence that the priority is money rather than not safety?
To a certain extent, I mean, if you find somebody, a city employee, for running this red light camera, that becomes, I think part of it is just the frustration over paperwork. It may also be really that they don't feel, they feel like city employees should be sort of exempt from these laws. There's nothing really exceptional about city employees, and there's certainly nothing exceptional about laws that favor city employees over the rest of us. I mean, police, fire, they've got all kinds of incredible exceptions, and not just when they're driving their work vehicles, but also when they get in trouble at their jobs or that kind of thing. So I mean, I'm not actually sure that public employees being exempt from speeding camera tickets has anything to do with the fact that speeding cameras are intended to generate revenue more than they are to increase safety. I think that just has to do with a totally separate but equally problematic trend that public sector employees in general get to play by a different set of rules.
I want to go back to something you talked about a moment ago, and that is that, what kind of cameras these actually are. These are not cell phone style cameras. These are very expensive pieces of equipment, as we know. I held this up earlier. This isn't mine, but you can actually see, the license plate, make out a pretty good picture of the person driving the car. So these are really, really good cameras. Talk a little bit about, I don't know if you know how much they cost. I certainly don't. And talk about the role of these private companies in sort of selling these cameras to different places.
Well, thanks to vandals in Maryland, in the state of Maryland, we do kind of know how much these cameras cost, because Maryland just recently has installed everywhere that, in certain parts of Maryland that have experienced vandalism on their red light cameras, they've installed another camera next to that one to document vandalism. So according to the state of Maryland, these cameras cost anywhere from $30,000 a piece to $100,000 a piece, which is part of the reason why municipalities only get about 20% of the revenue from these cameras, because the other 80% goes to paying for the equipment and then also paying for the companies that operate them and that issue the tickets. Because cities have basically, they've outsourced a big process, a lot of writing tickets for speeding in general. These started out at intersections to discourage speeding and discourage red light running. Now they've got them everywhere. I mean, there's on I-95, the interstate along the east coast of the U.S., they have these in the medians on the interstate that sort of just capture speeders. But they're incredibly expensive. And if you think about a camera that costs $100,000 that issues, let's say, a $200 ticket, you have to issue a lot of those tickets to make your money back. A lot, even more if you consider the fact that, you know, states and cities don't get all the money that comes from these cameras. But at the same time, what does that save you? That saves you, you know, the pension of a police officer, that saves you gas for a cruiser, that saves you overtime pay, you know. So, I mean, cities see this as a cheaper way, basically, of, I hate to be crude, but of ripping people off. It's a cheaper way of ripping people off than of having cops out there sort of sitting around waiting to catch somebody going 6 miles over the speed limit.
Mike, I want to talk with you about the privacy aspect of this. From what I understand, these cameras are not just taking pictures of the license plate and the person driving the car. It also stores date, time, and location data. Talk about some of the privacy aspects of this.
I mean, to a certain extent, you know, there's anything that a camera is going to catch you doing in your car, there's a good chance that a police officer could also catch you doing because you're on a public roadway. And so there is, you know, there may be an argument that these sort of violate privacy to a certain extent, but I think even more troubling is that these cameras don't have discretion, and they can't, you know, nobody wants to get pulled over by a police officer who exaggerates that they were speeding, but it would be nice if you were pulled over by a police officer and you explained that you had to go to the bathroom, or that, you know, your wife was having a baby or something, and you know, a police officer could let you off the hook. And there's no discretion whatsoever with cameras. And they also present the other problem that a lot of times, you know, because bureaucracy is generally inefficient, let's say you sold your car on Monday and the person who bought it from you doesn't get a new license plate until Friday, and in between the day you sell it and the day the license plate is changed, that person runs a red light and a speeding camera captures their license plate. I mean, I've read lots of stories of people who they post their ticket online, and if you've ever gotten one of these, you know that the ticket often comes with an image of your car running the red light or speeding. And somebody comically posted this picture saying, you know, I got a ticket for speeding in my Toyota Corolla, but the picture attached to her ticket was of a man on a moped.
Oh, wow.
So there's all these like kind of crazy inefficiencies, and who do you review those with? You know, I mean.
No, I think a lot of people are finding that you can't review it with because you're fighting against a machine and not a person. It's an important discussion to be had, and certainly when we talked about it this morning in our editorial meeting, everyone sort of groaned just at the mention of it. So it's a topic that hits close to home for a lot of people. Mike Riggs, associate editor at Reason Magazine. Thanks so much.
Thank you.